"You're courting death." Fan Li roared furiously and flicked with her finger, causing a powerful strand of wind to shoot towards the center of Yang Ye's forehead. Yang Ye's pupils constricted. If it was in the past, then he would be fine even if he just stood there and let it hit him. Yet now it was sufficient to kill him in an instant. While he didn't have his strength anymore, he had his discerning ability, and her attack was covered in flaws under the detection of his enlightened sword heart. However, the sad thing was that he couldn't dodge it at all. At this moment, his movement couldn't keep up with his mind at all. Moreover, it was pointless even if it could, because the gap between their current strengths was truly too huge. Of course, Yang Yi wasn't entirely incapable of protecting himself. After all, he still had 2 strands of sword intent from the sword sect's founding ancestor. That sword intent had instantly blasted a half-saint flying that day. The woman before her was only at the Exalt realm, so she couldn't resist the might of that sword intent at all. He'd hoped to keep them so he could absorb them and strengthen his own sword intent in the future. Yet now, he was even about to lose his life, so he naturally wouldn't continue trying to save it. Right when Yang Yi was about to activate it, a ray of white light suddenly struck Fan Li's attack, and it immediately dispersed. Fan Li's brows knit together slightly, and then she looked at the woman in a green dress. Li Qingyi smiled and said, "Fan Li, this servant of yours is very interesting. I'd like to have a chat with him." Fan Li glanced at Yang Yi, and there was a trace of hostility in her eyes. However, she didn't dare refuse Li Qingyi. Yang Yi heaved a sigh of relief. After all, he only had 2 strands of sword intent from the unfettered one, so it was best if he could save them. Of course, he didn't let his guard down because he'd said something brainless in that moment of desperation, and he didn't know what she was thinking. She sized him up and said, "I noticed something just now. Besides you, everyone else had their heads lowered, and you were even constantly looking at us. Moreover, your eyes are very calm when you face us, and there isn't a trace of nervousness in them. Even when Fan Li attacked you, you were still very calm. Young man, you're really not ordinary." Yang Ye's heart shook. "So she has been paying attention to me since the beginning." The smiled and said, "See, just like this very moment, you're still so calm." As she spoke, she gazed at Fan Li and said, "Fan Li, do you know about his background?" Fan Li glanced at Yang Yi and said, "I picked him up on the streets, and I gave him a job cause he seemed pitiable. Just as you said, perhaps he had some background in the past, but it doesn't matter. No matter how dazzling he was in the past, he's only a cripple now. I presume you've noticed that his meridians have broken apart, and the severity of it is something that even a monarch realm expert can't mend." She gazed at Yang Yi when she spoke up to this point. "I don't like to owe others. I took your sword sheath, so I gave you a chance to live. However, you must remember that a person should get his attitude right. Perhaps you were once a formidable figure, but you're only a horsekeeper now. If you can't realize that, then you might die on the streets someday." Yang Yi glanced at her and didn't speak a word. Meanwhile, Li Qingyi suddenly smiled. "You don't seem like someone who exercises forbearance. What? Aren't you going to say something? Like the times change? Don't bully a young man when he's weak? Or you can look down on me now, but I'll be too high above you in the future." The corners of Yang Ye's mouth twitched. This woman. Yang Yi shook his head and said, "She's very right, isn't she?" Actually, he knew that even if Fan Li didn't say a thing, he wasn't the old Yang Yi who could slaughter half-saints like they were dogs. He was only at the mortal realm now, and he was one who didn't have the ability to fight at all. Just as Fan Li said, if he didn't get his attitude straight now, then he would really die before he even realized it. Fan Li glanced at Yang Yi with a trace of surprise. Li Qingyi gradually restrained her smile, and she gazed at Yang Yi for a short while before she said, "You said you liked me. Is that true?" Yang Yi remained silent. Li Qingyi suddenly cracked a smile and said, "I'm not one to judge a person by his appearance, but to be honest, you really are a little too ugly. Besides that, you're too weak as well. To be realistic, you aren't qualified to like me. Young man, use your brain when you speak in the future, or even death wouldn't be the worst outcome. Then what sort of strength would be needed to be qualified to like you?" Yang Yi was suddenly a little interested. Li Qingyi gazed at Yang Yi, shook her head, and chuckled. After that, she got on the horse and transformed into a ray of light that vanished into the sky. I got disregarded. Yang Yi shook his head and smiled bitterly. Fan Li suddenly said, "Do you know who she is?" Yang Yi shook his head in response. Fan Li turned to look at Yang Yi. There's a city situated tens of thousands of kilometers away, and it's called Stellar Sky City. The city governor's estate there is the only silver rank organization in an area of hundreds of thousands of kilometers. She is the next governor of that estate. Yet you said you liked her? I don't know if you were telling the truth or if it was some sort of extreme method to protect yourself. In short, no matter what, you have to understand your current identity and status. Otherwise, even death might not be the worst outcome. Yang Yi smiled and didn't speak a word. Fan Li suddenly said, "That sword sheath really was extraordinary. So, you're definitely not an ordinary person. Tell me what your true identity is." Yang Yi shook his head and said, "I've lost my memories. I can't remember many things." Fan Li gazed at Yang Yi for a short while, and then she said, "Remember that you're only a horsekeeper. Since you're a horsekeeper, then you should act like one. I'll kick you out of the Fan clan if you do that again." As soon as she finished speaking, she flashed onto a horse and vanished into the sky. "You took my sword sheath yet speak like you're upright and your actions were justified." Yang Yi shook his head as he watched her leave, and then he turned around and returned to his room. Yang Yi sat cross-legged on his bed and opened his open. There was a top-grade energy stone there. It was something he'd secretly kept when he fed the horses earlier. Yang Yi didn't hesitate to swallow it. He couldn't absorb spirit energy from the outside world because his meridians were shattered and clogged, so it was utterly impossible for him to absorb spirit energy from the outside world. The only other method was to absorb it internally. As soon as it entered his body, bits of spirit energy appeared within his body. Yang Yi was pleasantly surprised to notice that after the spirit energy was transformed into profound energy within him, it was actually violet-colored. Even though it wasn't true primordial violet energy, it wasn't ordinary profound energy. That made Yang Yi feel overjoyed, because the regenerative capabilities of the violet energy caused the meridians within him to slowly heal. Even though it was very slow, it allowed him to see hope. However, it didn't take long for a bitter expression to appear on his face, because the energy within that top-grade energy stone was exhausted. After it was converted into violet profound energy, only a very little amount remained. It was so little that it didn't really have much effect. "I need even more energy stones. It's best for them to be extreme-grade energy stones or other treasures that contain energy." But he faced a problem. The primordial pagoda was closed to him, so where would he get such energy stones? "Do I have no choice but to steal more horse food? That won't work, and it's utterly useless." Suddenly, the door to his room was opened. Yang Yi had just opened his eyes when a sword was against his neck. It was the Fan clan's second young miss, Fan Meng. "Ugly fellow, help me steal a horse." Fan Meng spoke coldly. Yang Yi secretly prepared the unfettered one's sword intent before he said, "Second young miss, if you want a horse, then can't you just head to the stables and get one? Why ask me to steal one for you?" "Humph. Manager Ma refuses to give one to me, and he says that it's because of my older sister's orders." Fan Meng spoke angrily. "You take care of the horses, so they wouldn't be vigilant against you if you go take a horse. I'm telling you right now, I'll kill you if you dare to refuse me." Yang Yi laughed bitterly and said, "Second young miss, there are so many horse keepers here. Why ask me?" "Because you're the bravest." Fan Meng continued, "All the others fear my older sister, so they would definitely not dare to help me steal a horse. I was watching earlier and noticed that you don't seem to fear my older sister, so I came looking for you." When she spoke up to this point, she moved her sword forward against Yang Ye's throat and said, I'm telling you not to hesitate or I won't be able to catch up to them." Yang Ye's face darkened. He said, "Your older sister will kill me if she knows that I stole a horse for you." Fan Meng spoke angrily. "You're a man yet you're actually afraid of death? Are you even a man? What the fuck?" Yang Ye's face twitched. Her logic is truly beyond me. Yang Yi pondered deeply for an instant and said, "Will I benefit from helping you? You want benefits?" Fan Meng was slightly stunned. "The benefit is that I won't kill you." Yang Yi was speechless. Yang Yi said, "Give me 10. No, give me 100 top-grade energy stones and I'll help you. All right?" He realized that she was determined to get the horse. Since he couldn't refuse, then he had no choice but to get something from her. Yang Yi had just finished speaking when a spatial ring appeared in front of him. Fan Meng said, "You're really a loser. You actually only asked for 100. There are 1,000 here, and they're all yours now. Go on and quickly steal a horse for me. 1,000 top-grade energy stones." Yang Yi took a deep breath. If he absorbed the energy within all of them, then he could advance to the King realm at the very least. So long as that happened, then he could leave the Fan clan. As for the ancient sheath, it wouldn't be too late to get it later. Yang Yi stopped hesitating before such temptation, and he went to help her steal a horse. Because he was one of the horse keepers, so he was able to accomplish it with absolute ease. Fan Meng was delighted when she saw the Pegasus, and she hurriedly got onto it. She was just about to leave when she seemed to have thought of something, and she turned around to gaze at Yang Yi. She said, "You'll definitely go report this once I leave, and I'll definitely be taken back if that happens. That won't do. You must come with me." As she spoke, she didn't even allow Yang Yi to refuse. She immediately grabbed Yang Yi, tossed him behind herself, urged the horse forward, and vanished into the sky. Yang Yi was shocked. He hadn't expected this little girl to actually take him along. Could he even endure the speed of the horse in his current state? No. So, his face instantly warped from the strong winds that struck him upon their ascent into the air. He wanted to say something, but he couldn't speak at all. So, he had no choice but to hold tightly onto her and press his face against her back. He really felt so aggrieved, and curses were surging through his heart. Fan Meng had never been so close to a man before, so she instantly flared up when she recovered from her shock. "Hey! What are you doing? Quickly let me go or I'll throw you off." How could Yang Yi dare to do that? Not only did he ignore her, he even held tighter onto her. However, he seemed to have wrapped his hands around the wrong position in this moment of desperation, and he felt something soft in his hands. It just so happened then he even squeezed on them. As soon as he realized what it was, he knew that it was over. Sure enough. I'll kill you." Fan Meng's voice resounded through the sky, right when she drew her sword and was about to strike Yang Yi. A ray of golden light suddenly shot up from below. It was extremely swift to the point even Fan Meng couldn't detect it. However, Yang Yi had both seen it and sensed it. He didn't hesitate to hold her and twist their bodies off the horse. Fan Meng was furious, but she was immediately stunned when she saw the horse exploding into pieces. "Stop daydreaming. Quickly think of a way to deal with this situation or we're both dead." Yang Yi held tightly onto her and couldn't help but roar furiously when he noticed that she was still stunned. He'd just finished speaking when a powerful gust of wind shot into his mouth, causing him to hurriedly shut it. Meanwhile, Fan Meng finally recovered from her shock, and she quickly utilized her profound energy to form a pair of wings. But their figures had only just stopped falling when another ray of golden light shot towards them. It was extremely swift, and the energy it contained was extraordinarily terrifying. Fan Meng merely took a single glance at it before she knew that she was absolutely incapable of resisting it. At this moment, her face turned ghastly pale. "Pour your profound energy into your sword and enhance it with sword intent." Yang Yi suddenly grabbed Fan Meng's hand which held her sword and shouted. While she was puzzled, she still did as he said, because she had no other choice right now. As soon as she poured her profound energy and sword intent into her sword, the golden ray of light was just 3 inches away from her. Suddenly, she felt her hand move, and then the gold light stopped. A moment of silence ensued, and then an explosion resounded as the golden light exploded apart. Moreover, the aftershock from the explosion blasted both of them down from midair. There was a huge tree on the ground below, and a man who held a longbow in his hand was frowning. How could that be possible? That little girl is only at the low rank of the spirit realm. Even if she possesses 4th-level sword intent, it's still impossible for her to stop my arrow. This is quite strange. He remained silent on the spot for a short while, and then he flashed over to the position Yang Yi and Fan Meng descended to. At this moment, Yang Yi and Fan Meng were in quite bad shape. They didn't die from the fall because they fell into a forest, and the trees had slowed down their fall. Of course, it wasn't pleasant, especially for Yang Yi because he was at the bottom when both of them crashed to the ground. His current physical body wasn't the same as it used to be, and he almost lost his life from the fall. This won't do. I must recover as soon as possible, or I'll die sooner or later. The corners of Yang Ye's mouth twitched. At this moment, he didn't even have the strength to move a muscle. Suddenly, he felt coldness come from his throat. He opened his eyes and saw that Fan Meng had placed her sword against his throat. Who exactly are you? Fan Meng's eyes were filled with excitement and happiness. That strike earlier seemed to have struck the weakest point on that golden ray of light, and then, I don't know how to describe it. You describe it? She seemed to be too excited and wasn't able to speak smoothly. Yang Yi said, "Can you put your sword down first? She really keeps raising her sword at all times." Fan Meng replied, Tell me the truth. Why exactly did you come to our fan clan? Oh, I know. When she spoke up to this point, she withdrew her sword and came close to Yang Yi before she grinned. You definitely like my older sister, so you concealed your strength and came to our clan to approach her, right? You don't have to say anything. I'm sure that it's definitely the reason. Yang Yi was quite stunned. Meanwhile, Fan Meng suddenly patted him on the shoulder. You know, I'm the closest to my big sister. So long as I speak on your behalf, then it'll simply be beyond easy for you to pursue her. However, you have to teach me that move you used just now. Yang Yi was quite amused when he heard this. He knew that while what he did just now seemed very simple, a sword cultivator would definitely realize that it wasn't simple at all. Obviously, the little girl before him had taken him to be an expert. While she seemed to be careless, she wasn't stupid at all, and she was actually quite cunning. Yang Yi said, "Let's put that aside for now. That fellow who's pursuing you will definitely not give up. It's best for us to leave this place as soon as possible." Fan Meng waved her hand and spoke heroically. "You're so strong. So what would we have to fear? You can just kill him when he gets here. I guarantee that I'll praise you in front of my big sister. Can you please take a look at what sort of state I'm in right now? I can't even move. How am I supposed to kill him? I think I'd be the one who's killed." Yang Yi really wanted to slap her flying because she was really too silly. Right? She sized him up and said, Then what should we do? I'll definitely be unable to escape if I bring you along. Then leave yourself. Yang Yi spoke calmly. Isn't that not right? Fan Meng was quite embarrassed. After all, Yang Yi had saved her life just now. Yang Yi said, "It doesn't matter. You'll definitely have a chance to escape if you leave by yourself. You might not have a chance if you take me along." You are the one who said that." She spoke softly. Yang Yi nodded and said, "Leave quickly. It'll be too late if you still don't act." Fan Meng nodded, and then she turned around and ran away. Yang Yi shook his head when he saw that, and then he withdrew some top-grade energy stones and swallowed them before starting to absorb the energy within them. He didn't blame her because there was no relationship between them. So how could she possibly allow herself to fall into a hopeless situation for his sake? Suddenly, Fan Meng returned to Yang Yi. She didn't speak a single word and just carried him on her back before fleeing towards the distance. Yang Yi was stunned for quite some time, and then he asked, "Why did you come back?" She replied, "You saved me earlier, and I would really feel regretful if I just allowed you to be killed. I heard that not having a clear mind is bad for the sword Dao." Yang Yi fell silent for a long time and said, "Did you learn the sword Dao on your own, or has someone been teaching you?" She spoke in quite an aggrieved tone. "While our clan is quite wealthy, it isn't capable of hiring a formidable sword cultivator. Moreover, the ancient sword school refuses to accept me. So, I learned everything on my own or asked my big sister for guidance. But she doesn't know much about the sword Tao as well. He asked, "Why were you refused by the ancient sword school?" She explained, "Their minimum requirement is the 6th level of sword intent, and that person can't be older than 16 years old. I'm already 16 now, so if I can't join in this year, I'll never have another chance. If I can't join the ancient sword school, then I won't be able to help my big sister." At that time, she'd definitely be forced to marry that scoundrel from the Yi clan. Yang Yi shook his head, and then he rubbed her head and said, "I'll teach you then." "Really?" Fan Meng seemed to be pleasantly surprised. Yang Yi nodded. "Of course. But you can't tell your older sister." "Why?" She was quite puzzled. Yang Yi pondered deeply for a moment and said, "Even you've realized that I'm heavily injured right now, and my strength hasn't recovered. If my enemies find out about the state that I'm in, then they'll definitely come to kill me. So, I can only teach you in secret." Actually, he wasn't lying. He hadn't forgotten that Lu Yuanhao was in the outer heavens. If Lu Yuanhao found out that he was still alive, then he would be utterly incapable of fighting Lu Yuanhao with his current strength. "You were definitely an extremely formidable figure in the past, right?" Fan Meng's voice carried a trace of excitement, as if she'd found a treasure trove. He replied, "I was just ordinary. Were you as formidable as Lu Wanner? She's at the Monarch realm, and she even possesses heaven rank sword intent. I even heard that she possesses the void sword physique. Even though I don't know what that is, it seems to be very formidable. Besides that, she even defeated numerous geniuses of the ancient sword school." When she spoke about Lu Wanner, Fan Meng's voice actually carried adoration. "Lu Wanner." Yang Yi smiled yet stayed silent. Actually, he wanted to see Lu Wanner as well. However, the state he was in right now didn't allow it. "Right? Our clan wouldn't have to suffer being threatened by the Yi clan if I was that strong. And my big sister wouldn't have to marry someone she doesn't like." Fan Meng seemed to be slightly sad. Yang Yi said, "There's no rush. You can take it slow." He suddenly frowned when he spoke up to this point, and then he said, "Stop." Even though she was puzzled, Fan Meng still stopped. At this moment, Yang Yi had recovered a little of his ability to move after nurturing himself with spirit energy. So he turned around and looked towards the distance. He is caught up. As soon as Yang Yi finished speaking, a man who wore a black embroidered rope and carried an ink-black longbow appeared within their fields of vision. The divine archer, Lu Wufeng. Fan Meng's face turned pale when she saw him. Yang Yi frowned as well because the man was at the low rank of the Exalt realm, and that was an entire realm of cultivation higher than Fan Meng. Yang Yi shook his head, took Fan Meng's hand, and then walked towards Lu Wufeng as he said, "I've been waiting for you." At the same time, he said in his heart, "I have no choice but to put on a show this time." He was waiting for me? The man who was about to attack was stunned when he heard Yang Yi. The divine archer Lu Wufeng. He's said to be the #1 expert at the Exalt realm within our city. Even my big sister is extremely fearful of him. Fan Meng was afraid that Yang Yi would underestimate the enemy. So she hurriedly spoke in a low voice, I've sent a transmission talisman to my big sister. Will be saved once she arrives. The #1 expert in the Exalt realm? Ha ha ha." Yang Yi was stunned for a moment, and then he started roaring with laughter. This time, it wasn't just Lu Wufeng who was stunned. Even Fan Meng was dazed. Yang Yi laughed for a while before he walked slowly towards Lu Wufeng while pulling Fan Meng along with him. He said, "One strike of my sword. Resist just a single strike and I'll spare your life." His tone was carefree as if Lu Wufeng was trash. Fan Meng blinked while a trace of admiration appeared in her eyes. While he's only at the mortal realm, his bearing is absolutely not something a mortal realm cultivator can possess. That arrow of mine should have been crushed by him. He's absolutely not ordinary since he was able to do that with such ease. Lu Wufeng didn't attack, and his expression grew even more serious. Yang Yi continued leading Fan Meng towards Lu Wufeng. Even though he didn't emanate any aura, Lu Wufeng felt like a mountain was pressing down upon him. and even his heartbeat started to slow down. Lu Wufeng's expression was growing more and more solemn, while the admiration in Fan Meng's eyes was growing stronger. Sweat actually started to gradually appear on Lu Wufeng's face. But he didn't flee because he knew that he would be finished if he fled now. Actually, Yang Yi was quite anxious in his heart as well. He was placing psychological pressure on Lu Wufeng now. Could be considered as psychological pressure if one wanted to make it sound nice. But in truth, he was actually just frightening Lu Wufeng. So long as Lu Wufeng attacked, then the psychological pressure Yang Yi created would instantly collapse on itself. Of course, he could utilize the unfettered one-sword intent to kill Lu Wufeng. However, he truly didn't want to use that sword intent unless he had no other choice. He wasn't in the same state anymore. If he were to activate that sword intent now, then he would definitely suffer backlash from it. After all, he was only at the first level of sword intent. Actually, strictly speaking, he wasn't even at the first level. So, the consequences of forcefully utilizing sword intent which surpassed the third level of the heaven rank would definitely be dire. Lu Wufeng's face was covered in cold sweat when Yang Yi arrived just around 20 m away from him. Moreover, there were even threads of blood in his eyes. However, he didn't flee. Yang Yi nodded lightly in his heart when he saw that. Perhaps Lu Wufeng wasn't very strong, but his willpower and disposition were very good. Bang! Suddenly, an aura surged out from Lu Wufeng, the mid-rank of the Exalt realm. He'd actually advanced beneath the pressure Yang Yi exerted upon him. The corners of Yang Ye's mouth twitched slightly. My act is quite a failure. Not only did I fail to scare him away, I allowed him to advance. Now I'm really in trouble. Fan Meng's face turned pale. Lu Wufeng wasn't aware of the current state of Yang Ye's body. But she was. If Lu Wufeng attacked, then both of them would definitely die. Huff! Lu Wufeng released a sigh, and his entire body relaxed. The pressure he felt earlier had vanished as well. He gazed at Yang Yi again, but the solemn expression in his eyes had vanished and only burning battle intent remained. I have the strength to fight even if I face a low-rank Monarch Realm expert. As he spoke, he withdrew a dark green arrow and knocked it on his bow. Fan Meng's lips shivered as she held tightly onto Yang Ye's hand. Meanwhile, Yang Yi shook his head and smiled. Your disposition and willpower aren't bad. If you survive today, then you'll definitely accomplish something in your life. He grabbed the sword on Fan Meng's waist while he spoke. As soon as he did, the sword suddenly emanated a sword howl and even started to tremble. At this moment, it seemed like it had come to life. Lu Wufeng's pupils constricted while a solemn expression arose deep within his eyes. On the other hand, Fan Meng gazed at Yang Yi with disbelief, and her eyes were covered in shock and bewilderment. Yang Yi chuckled, and then he continued walking towards Lu Wufeng while pulling Fan Meng along. I'd originally intended to kill you in an instant, but I cherish geniuses. Wouldn't it be a pity to end you just like that? As he spoke, he stopped moving and stabbed the sword on the ground. After that, he picked up a stick that was around a meter long. Lu Wufeng and Fan Meng were puzzled by Yang Ye's actions, and they just stared at him. It was especially so for Lu Wufeng. At this moment, the solemn expression in his eyes was even greater than before, because this ugly white-haired freak didn't seem like an ordinary fellow. After he picked it up, Yang Yi pushed the stick into Fan Meng's right hand before moving behind her. He wrapped his left hand around her slim waist while his right hand took her right hand which held the stick. Fan Meng blushed from the scent of a man that came from behind her, and she was about to resist when Yang Yi suddenly raised her right hand and pointed it at Lu Wufeng. He said, I would be bullying you if I fought you. Come. I won't utilize my profound energy or sword intent. I'll let this junior disciple of mine fight you. It just so happens to be a great opportunity for her to learn how to use the sword. As soon as he finished speaking, Yang Yi moved his head close to her ear and whispered, Circulate your profound energy and enhance the stick with your sword intent. Don't let your thoughts run wild. Focus. Even though she wasn't used to this, Fan Meng knew that she had no other choice now, so she could only do as Yang Yi said. Yang Yi held tightly onto her waist while he slowly moved her right hand, and he gazed at Lu Wufeng and said, Come. Lu Wufeng gazed at Yang Yi for a short while. When he noticed that Yang Yi really hadn't circulated any profound energy or sword intent, he couldn't help but become slightly hesitant, because this proved that Yang Yi was completely unafraid. However, he was truly unwilling to leave just like that. He hesitated for a moment before a cold glow flashed through his eyes, and then his arrow shot out towards the center of Fan Meng's forehead. The arrow was swift like a bolt of lightning, and it even rumbled through the air. Fan Meng's body trembled slightly while terror appeared in her eyes, because not to mention resisting it, she couldn't even see it clearly. But right at this moment, she felt her hand move. Clang! A clear and melodious sound resounded as Lu Wufeng's arrow stopped just over 30 inches before Fan Meng. Fan Meng looked over and saw that the branch in her hand had suddenly stabbed at a position half an inch behind the tip of the arrow. Fan Meng's eyes lit up when she noticed this because it was the weakest point on the arrow. Striking that position was similar to striking the heart of a snake, and it was extremely effective. Lu Wufeng's expression became unprecedentedly solemn when he witnessed this scene. He was sure that the white-haired man who stood before him was no ordinary person, and the man's strength might really surpass his own. However, he was still quite unwilling to give up. He was unwilling to allow his arrows to be stopped with such ease. So he knocked another arrow and shot it. The arrow left a long green streak behind it as it shot through here. Everywhere it passed, space was torn into pieces while the air in its path exploded apart. Fan Meng had turned completely pale because she felt a powerful aura press down upon her when that arrow left the bowstring, and that arrow made her incapable of even arousing the thought to resist. She knew that it was a form of pressure. While Lu Wufeng hadn't comprehended archery intent, it carried its own pressure and aura. Moreover, it was extremely strong to the point that it wasn't inferior to her 4th-level sword intent. Coupled with the fact that his cultivation surpassed hers, she wasn't a match for him once she lost the advantage that her sword intent gave her. Suddenly, she felt her hand move again, and then, Lu Wufeng's arrow stopped in front of her again, and then the green glow it emanated dispersed before it fell to the ground. However, Fan Meng's palm had split open and blood was slowly seeping out from there. Yang Yi gazed at Lu Wufeng and spoke slowly. The force it carries is all right, but its aura and speed are insufficient. Moreover, your technique is too simple and not cunning enough. When you don't have the advantage in speed and strength, then a technique that's too simple is also too useless. This current technique you're using is exactly that, too useless. Not to mention 2 shots. I can even deal with 200 shots with absolute ease. Lu Wufeng pondered deeply for a short while, and then he raised his head and looked at Yang Yi. A cold glow flashed through his eyes. He knocked his arrows, and then he flicked repeatedly with his fingers. Arrow after arrow shot towards Yang Yi. All of them weren't shot out in a single line, and they shot towards Yang Yi and Fan Meng from various different angles. It was even to the extent that some arrows would suddenly turn when they were about to arrive before Fan Meng, and then they attacked from a completely different angle. If Lu Wufeng's previous technique was simple, then this was complicated. Moreover, it was extremely complicated, because every single one of them seemed like they were being controlled, and they were dancing around Yang Yi and Fan Meng. Fan Meng was utterly stunned by this scene. She didn't know how to deal with such an attack at all. She turned her head slightly to gaze at Yang Yi, yet she noticed that Yang Yi had actually closed his eyes slightly. After that, her hand started to move. The stick stabbed forward, flicked, swept horizontally, tapped light to the side, slashed forcefully. As her hand moved, arrow after arrow dropped incessantly to the ground, and it didn't take long for all the arrows to drop to the ground. The enlightened sword heart. The ability to overcome all techniques? Lu Wufeng's face turned slightly pale when he witnessed this scene, and his eyes were filled with disbelief. On the other hand, Fan Meng was utterly stunned. Her eyes were opened wide, and she seemed like she'd been petrified. Yang Yi slowly opened his eyes, gazed at Lu Wufeng and said, "Even though your strength is a little weak, your disposition and natural talent aren't bad. It really is a waste to kill you, so leave. Right? Don't tell anyone about me. Otherwise, you'll die before you know it." Lu Wufeng took a deep breath. and then he bowed to Yang Yi. "Thank you, senior, for sparing my life." He turned around after he spoke and intended to leave. However, he stopped after taking 2 steps, and he said, "Miss Fan, be wary of the Yi clan." As soon as he finished speaking, his figure flashed and vanished from their field of vision. Yang Yi immediately heaved a sigh of relief when he saw Lu Wufeng leave. Suddenly, a few figures appeared here. It was Fan Li, Li Qingyi, and 2 other young men. They were stunned when they saw Yang Yi and Fan Meng, because Yang Yi was holding Fan Meng tightly from behind, and his left hand was even wrapped around her waist, while his right hand was holding her hand. "You dog! How dare you!" Fan Li's furious roar suddenly resounded, and then a mouthful of blood sprayed from Yang Ye's mouth as his figure flew off into the distance. Yang Yi flew over 1 kilometer back, and he smashed through numerous trees before he crashed to the ground. The blood within his body roiled while stars seemed to be blinking in his eyes. He felt extreme pain surge through his entire body while his consciousness started to become blurry. This time, Yang Yi was really quite furious. Suddenly, Fan Li appeared in front of him, and then she spoke coldly. "I told you that you should remember your place, but now it seems like you didn't take it seriously. Since it's like that, I can't keep you alive." As she spoke, she slowly raised her right hand, and then a gust of wind flashed down towards him. A trace of ferociousness flashed through Yang Ye's eyes as he prepared himself to activate the Unfettered One's sword intent. Even though he would have to pay a price that he couldn't endure, he had no other choice right now. Right when he was about to use it to instantly annihilate her, Fan Meng suddenly appeared in front of him. She hurriedly helped him up and said, Are you all right?" Yang Yi rolled his eyes when he heard her. "Do I look like I'm all right? Can't you see that I can't even stand properly?" Meanwhile, Fan Li suddenly spoke coldly, "Little Meng, more aside." Yang Ye's eyes narrowed slightly while the sword intent in his mind was ready to be shot out at any moment. Fan Meng took a deep breath, and then she turned around to gaze at Fan Li. "Big sister, why do you always have to act like you're always right? Do you even know what happened just now? You know nothing. If it wasn't for—" "How dare you!" Fan Li suddenly interrupted Fan Meng while flames of rage burned in her eyes. "You're actually talking back to me for him?" Fang Meng seemed to be quite afraid of her older sister, but she didn't shrink back and continued, "If it wasn't for him, then Little Meng, just keep quiet." Suddenly, a white-robed man walked over and mediated. "Do you know how worried your older sister was? Earlier, we were about to win a battle, but she suddenly received a transmission from you, and she immediately gave up on it. Moreover, she even asked us to rush over with her because she was worried that something would happen to you. However, we didn't see anyone when we arrived here, but we saw you." When he spoke up to this point, the white-robed man glanced at Yang Yi, who stood behind Fang Meng, and he said, "Little Meng, just tell us how your sister will be able to hold her head up high when you acted like that with that lowly bastard? Would the Fan clan be able to avoid humiliation? You're not young anymore, and you should know how to act." Fan Meng glanced at Fan Li, and then she lowered her head slightly and said, "Big sister, I'm sorry." The flames of rage in Fan Li's eyes reduced slightly when she heard this, and her voice became slightly softer. "Move aside. He doesn't know his place and has even spoiled your name. I can't let him live." "No!" Fan Meng instantly became unyielding. "Big sister, you can't kill him. She wanted to tell them what had happened just now, but she wasn't able to do so, because she knew very well that even if she did tell them, none of them would believe her. Moreover, Yang Yi might even be in danger because of that. "Move aside." Fan Li's gaze gradually grew icy cold. Even though Fan Meng feared her older sister, she still refused to move aside. Killing intent appeared in Fan Li's eyes. Of course, it was aimed at Yang Yi. However, she hadn't noticed that it was the same for Yang Yi. Suddenly, Li Qingyi's voice resounded. "There are signs of battle here." All of them looked over and saw countless broken arrows all over the ground. Fan Li's jet-black brows knit together when she noticed them, and then she turned around to look at Fan Meng. "What happened here?" Fan Meng heaved a sigh of relief when she noticed that her older sister didn't seem to have any intention to attack anymore. She said, "We encountered Lu Wufeng just now." Besides Li Qingyi, the expressions of Fan Li and the other two men changed when they heard that name. Meanwhile, Li Qingyi said, "While Lu Wufeng is only an independent cultivator, his archery is quite good. At the very least, there are no more than 5 Exalt Realm cultivators throughout Skywind City that can defeat him. Based on the scene here, he probably executed his arrow convergence technique. However, he failed." When she spoke up to this point, she gazed at Fan Meng and said, "Who saved both of you?" Fan Li and the others gazed at Fan Meng. Fan Meng fell silent. She really wanted to say that it was Yang Yi, but she stopped herself, because they would definitely not believe her. Moreover, based on the conversation between Yang Yi and Lu Wufeng, she knew that Yang Yi didn't want to expose himself. So, she said, He saved us and left. I don't know who he was." Yang Yi heaved a sigh of relief when he heard her. It wasn't that he wanted to keep a low profile, it was because he had no choice but to do so. Even though he knew that this world was the outer heavens now, it was still too unfamiliar to him. Just like this encounter. After he left Skywind City, he noticed that the city was actually surrounded by mountains. It was surrounded by endless mountains, and he couldn't see the end of them. Besides that, he sensed many obscure yet powerful auras within these mountains. At the very least, they were extremely strong for him in his current state. If his secrets were to be exposed right now, then it wouldn't be beneficial to him at all. Li Qingyi nodded lightly when she heard Fan Meng, and she said, "I presume it was definitely a Monarch Realm expert since he was able to deal with Lu Wufeng's technique with such ease. And he was probably not an ordinary Monarch Realm expert. I really want to get to know him if I have the chance." Fan Meng puckered her lips. "The Monarch Realm? He's only at the mortal realm. Then what about the state both of you were in?" Suddenly, Fan Li's gaze descended onto Yang Yi, and it was hostile. Moreover, her tone carried killing intent. Yang Yi's heart shook because it was obvious that she still didn't want to let him go. Of course, Yang Yi had never thought about letting her go. He wasn't one who would just let others bully him. If it was in the past, then he wouldn't have hesitated to activate the Unfettered One's sword intent to annihilate her, even if he had to pay a price. But after he experienced so much, he wasn't that impulsive anymore. While it was satisfying to be impulsive, it wasn't worth it if the price he had to pay was extremely huge. Fan Meng knew that her older sister would definitely not spare Yang Yi if she didn't give her older sister a proper explanation. She thought for a moment, and then said, "It was because he was trying to save me." Yang Yi smiled bitterly. "Does anyone even save someone like that? While that's the truth, would your older sister believe you?" However, Fan Li surprisingly believed her. Fan Li glanced at Yang Yi and nodded. "You did well to protect your master. I differentiate clearly between reward and punishment. These 100 top-grade energy stones are your reward." As she spoke, she waved her hand, and 100 top-grade energy stones appeared before Yang Yi. Yang Yi was slightly stunned and extremely puzzled, but it didn't take long for him to understand what was going on. She was a smart woman, and she was doing all of this to cover up what had happened. After all, if there wasn't a reasonable explanation, then it would be a lethal blow to Fan Meng's reputation. Li Qingyi glanced at Fan Li and smiled silently. Suddenly, Fan Li withdrew a whip and said, "I said that I differentiate clearly between reward and punishment. Since there are rewards, there naturally is punishment. You stole a horse and left the clan without permission, and that's something that servants aren't supposed to do. Moreover, you even caused little Meng to almost lose her life. Your punishment is 100 strikes of my whip." She immediately swung her right arm while she spoke. Swish! The sound of air being torn apart resounded, and then the sound of the whip colliding with flesh resounded. However, Yang Yi was fine because Fan Meng was standing in front of him. A blood-red scar had appeared on her. Everyone here was stunned, especially Fan Li. She hadn't expected that her younger sister would actually block her whip for the sake of that ugly servant of their clan. All of this made her mind go blank for a moment. Yang Yi was stunned as well, and then angry suddenly arose within him. He pulled Fan Meng behind himself and was about to speak. However, Fan Meng pulled him behind herself again, and then she gazed at her older sister. Big sister, he saved me. Don't make things difficult for him, all right? Consider it as me begging you not to. Fan Li was stunned as she gazed at the scar on Fan Meng's chest. A short while passed before she took a deep breath and said, "Let's drop this matter right now." As she spoke, she hurriedly withdrew a medicinal pill and gave it to Fan Meng. It's actually a first-grade pill, a blood stasis pill. The white-robed man had surprise in his eyes when he saw the pill. Young Miss Fan really is wealthy. You even have such medicinal pills. The other yellow-robed man had surprise in his eyes as well, because medicinal pills could be considered as rare treasures to them. After all, any medicinal pill, even the lowest-grade mortal pill, was extremely rare in Skywind City, because there were no alchemists in Skywind City. So, there were many occasions where one couldn't get a medicinal pill even if one had the money for it. A medicinal pill? Xianxia's eyes suddenly lit up. I can refine pills too. Moreover, it just so happened that he recalled that many pills could repair the meridians. Besides that, he could even sell them. After all, he needed a huge amount of energy stones right now. Xianxia couldn't help but feel excited when he thought up to this point. It's just a medicinal pill. How could it possibly be worthy of Brother Lin and Brother Yu? Fan Li took Fan Meng's hand, and there was pain and regret in her eyes. Both of them just smiled and didn't speak a word. Meanwhile, Li Qingyi spoke abruptly. "Since we're done here, then let's head out right away." Fan Meng hurriedly said, "Big sister, I want to go as well." Fan Li immediately refused. "No." Meanwhile, Li Qingyi suddenly spoke. "Young Miss Fan, there is something that I don't know if I should say." Fan Li glanced at her and said, "Please go ahead." Li Qingyi nodded and said, "Your sister's natural talent isn't bad, but she hadn't left your clan to temper herself. She's like a flower that has only lived in a greenhouse. To be honest, that's extremely harmful to her growth. Just think about it, even if a sword cultivator has comprehended sword intent, how strong would that sword cultivator be if that sword cultivator hasn't experienced life and death battles?" Fan Meng nodded forcefully as well. Fan Li fell silent for a short while, and then she nodded to Fan Meng. Fan Meng was overjoyed and quickly hugged Fan Li. The white-robed man pointed at Xianxia and said, "Then what about him?" Xianxia hurriedly said, "I'll leave." He had top-grade energy stones now, so all he had to do was absorb the energy within them as soon as possible and recover his strength. So long as he attained the King Realm, then he would have the ability to protect himself even in this mountain range. "No," Fan Li spoke flatly. "You have to follow us because we just happen to lack someone to do things for us. She intends to use that as an excuse to get me killed." Xianxia's heart shook while a cold glow flashed through the depths of his eyes. Even though he didn't know what their objective was, he had no doubt that it was definitely something dangerous. So, wasn't she trying to get him killed by bringing along someone like him who was at the mortal realm? Just like that, Xianxia started following them on their way. Of course, he didn't do it willingly. He had no other choice. After all, their fists were stronger than his. But it didn't take long before Xianxia became willing instead. Because the inner cores of the demon beasts which Fan Li's group killed all along the way had entered into his pockets. Of course, it was mainly because the cultivations of those demon beasts were too low, and Fan Li's group felt that such inner cores were beneath their consideration. So Xianxia gained instead. The inner cores were useless to Fan Li's group, but they were very useful to Xianxia right now. He'd thought that those 1,000 top-grade energy stones he obtained would be sufficient to advance into the King Realm, but he noticed that even after he secretly swallowed over 500 of them all along the way, he'd merely attained the low rank of the First Heaven Realm. He was very uncertain if the remaining 500-plus top-grade energy stones he had would even be able to advance his cultivation to the mid-rank of the First Heaven Realm. Fortunately, he gained a huge number of inner cores all along the way, and it made him feel much more confident. So long as he attained the King Realm, then he would have the strength to protect himself, and he could leave Skywind City to look for Xiao Yushi and the others. As for Fan Li, to be honest, while she'd acted against him on many occasions, He hadn't even taken her seriously. To be a little arrogant, she wasn't even worthy of being his enemy. She was just a conceited woman. He wasn't being conceited himself because it was a fact. Even though there were 2 whole realms of cultivation between him and Fan Li, he was confident that killing her would be beyond easy once he attained the king realm. For some unknown reason, Fan Li's group weren't flying through the air, and they were walking instead. Fan Li and the others were walking ahead while Yang Yi followed slowly from behind. So long as they killed demon beasts, Yang Yi would immediately cut it open and take its core. Young Miss Fan, that servant of yours is really smart. If he's able to survive this trip, then it wouldn't even be a problem for him to be a small-time rich man. The white-robed man glanced at Yang Yi, who was collecting inner cores behind them, and he smiled indifferently while the ridicule in the corners of his eyes wasn't concealed at all. The yellow-robed man added, "The reason nobodies are nobodies is because they are willing to be ordinary and never think about self-improvement. Moreover, they feel happy upon obtaining a little bit of treasures. Yet they don't realize that what they gain isn't even trash in the eyes of others. How sad." Brother Yu Lang is absolutely right. The white-robed man gazed at Yang Yi and chuckled. He seems to be only around the age of 20, but he's just at the mortal realm. Haha. Even the servant in my clan who cleans the chamber pots is stronger than him. Even though fortune is very important, hard work is even more important. To think that I, Lin Ning, am just an independent cultivator who has no one to rely on or any formidable inheritances. But haven't I attained the exalt realm as well? As he spoke, he glanced at Li Qingyi and Fan Li out of the corner of his eyes. However, he was disappointed to notice that they didn't react to his words at all, whereas Fan Meng was glaring angrily at the 2 of them. Lin Ning and Yu Lang stopped wasting their breaths when it only incurred Fan Meng's anger. However, their eyes carried a trace of gloominess when they looked at Yang Yi. Yang Yi had naturally heard their conversation, but he acted like he hadn't and just continued picking the inner cores. After swallowing the remaining top-grade energy stones and some inner cores, Yang Yi was at the mid-rank of the first heaven realm. However, Fan Li and the others weren't able to see through his intentional concealment of his cultivation. Fan Meng had wanted to go to Yang Yi on many occasions throughout this period, but Fan Li stopped her, causing Fan Meng to pucker her lips all along the way. Suddenly, Yang Yi stopped moving, and he glanced at the surroundings before he frowned. At the same time, Li Qingyi suddenly stopped, and then she glanced at the surroundings and said, "Be careful. This should be the White Ape Clan's territory. They live in groups, so let's move quickly and avoid alarming them." Fan Li and the others nodded when they heard her, and then they sped up. However, Yang Yi moved backward repeatedly. His actions didn't escape their notice, and Fan Li flashed over to him and spoke coldly, "What are you doing?" "I'm afraid. All of you can go without me." For the sake of proving that he really was afraid, Yang Ye's body started to tremble while terror appeared in his eyes. A wisp of detest flashed through Fan Li's eyes when she saw Yang Yi act in such a way. On the other hand, Li Qingyi's beautiful brows knit together. As for Yu Lang and Lin Ning, they started laughing with ridicule. Fan Meng walked over to Yang Yi. She was just about to speak when Fan Li pulled her to the side and glared at Fan Meng. "Stay away from him!" Fan Meng puckered her lips yet didn't dare go against her older sister. She could just look at Yang Yi from afar and ask, What are you afraid of?" "Death," Yang Yi answered without the slightest hesitation. "Ha ha ha." Lin Ning suddenly started laughing, and he laughed for some time before he pointed at Yang Yi and said, "Young Miss Fan, this servant of yours is really too useless. As your friend, I have to say that such a servant is truly a humiliation. It's best to just kill him and prevent him from spoiling the reputation of your Fan clan." Fan Li's face was quite unsightly. She wanted to attack, but Fan Meng was standing in front of Yang Yi. She said, "Big sister, Yang Yi said that there's danger ahead. Then there definitely is danger. Why don't we go around that area?" "Shut up," Fan Li suddenly shouted. "Have you not brought enough shame to yourself?" Fan Meng's eyes instantly turned red from the grievances she experienced. How did I bring shame to anyone? Yang Yi wouldn't just say that if he wasn't sure. You! Fan Li raised her hand and almost swung her palm against Fan Meng's face. However, she stopped herself when she saw the scar her whip left behind on Fan Meng's chest. However, she was still quite angry, and it caused her chest to rise and fall repeatedly. Meanwhile, Li Qingyi walked over. The White Ape Clan's members are mostly at the King Realm, and there are very few at the Exalt Realm. However, they live in groups, so it'll be quite troublesome if they lock their sights on us. But it's far from sufficient to be a threat for us. I'm sorry for making young Miss Li witness such a scene. Fan Li glanced coldly at Yang Yi and said, "Since you're afraid of death, then you can stay here by yourself." Stay here by himself? Lin Ning chuckled. Why don't you just kill him, young Miss Fan? If he'd left here by himself, then any wild beast would be enough to end his life. Yang Yi glanced at them, and then his gaze descended onto Fan Meng. He said, I'm very sensitive to danger. Trust me, the things ahead will be very troublesome to deal with. We can just go around them. Trust you? Lin Ning grunted coldly. Who do you think you are? An ant at the mortal realm actually dares to talk big before a group of Exalt Realm experts? How laughable! Yang Yi shrugged and said, Then go on ahead. To be honest, he hoped all of them died, but he couldn't bear to see Fan Meng be in danger. That was why he warned them. I believe him. Meanwhile, Fan Meng spoke abruptly. However, she only got a glare from Fan Li in return. That made her hurriedly lower her head again. Yang Yi shook his head slightly when he witnessed this scene, and then he gazed at Li Qingyi and said, Since I was able to survive while I'm in such a state, I definitely have some ability. My ability is to sense danger, and the path ahead feels dangerous to me. We can just go around this area. It won't take too much time. He knew that Li Qingyi was the true leader of the group, and Fan Meng couldn't only avoid falling into a dangerous situation if Li Qingyi agreed. Danger? Lin Ning laughed coldly. For you, maybe. After all, even a wild beast is a threat to you. You have to realize that you're not like us. We're Exalt Realm experts, and you're only at the mortal realm. Being a threat to you and a threat to us is a completely different thing. Yang Yi didn't even spare him a glance and just gazed at Li Qingyi. Suddenly, Yu Lang said, Miss Li, even though we're only at the Exalt Realm, our group strength is even sufficient to fight a Monarch Realm expert. If word spreads that we went around this area because a mortal realm cultivator said that it's dangerous, then how would we maintain our foothold in the city? Moreover, it would definitely affect Miss Li's reputation. Li Qingyi glanced at Yang Yi and said, Let's go. She turned around and walked away once she finished speaking. Lin Ning gazed at Yang Yi and laughed coldly. Just stay here by yourself. I hope we'll still be able to see you on the way back. As soon as he finished speaking, his figure flashed off towards Li Qingyi. Yu Lang glanced indifferently at Yang Yi, and then he immediately followed Li Qingyi as well. Let's go. Fan Li took Fan Meng's hand and intended to take her along. However, Fan Meng refused to move. This made Fan Li's face immediately turn cold, and she spoke angrily. What exactly do you want? Have you not had enough of acting willfully? When are you going to grow up? Fan Meng started crying. I've already tried my very best. I just don't want you to be in danger. Why do you have to be so mean to me? You've only known him for a few hours. What exactly did he give you to make you trust him like this? Fan Li pointed at Yang Yi. She'd calmed down, but the killing intent in her eyes had grown even stronger. Bang! Suddenly, a huge explosion resounded from afar, and the entire ground trembled while countless trees exploded apart. After that, Li Qingyi, Li Ning, and Yu Lang appeared within their fields of vision. However, there were two colossi that were huge like hills chasing after them. Those colossi were completely snow-white, but their heads and limbs were dark blue. Moreover, a huge group of white apes were following behind those two colossi. Mutated white ape kings, and two of them. At this moment, Fan Li's face instantly turned snow-white. On the other hand, Fan Meng was completely stunned. Meanwhile, Yang Yi suddenly grabbed Fan Meng's arm and started running. A bunch of idiots. I told them not to go, yet they just had to. Let's see what all of you do now. Yang Yi pulled Fan Meng along as he ran madly. But it didn't take long for him to stop because rumbling resounded throughout the surroundings. After that, a huge expanse of trees started to fall in the distance. "Ah! Save me!" Meanwhile, a shrill cry resounded from behind them. Yang Yi discerned it as Lin Ning's voice. Yang Yi looked over to the source of the voice, and he saw Lin Ning being surrounded by a few dozen white apes. Moreover, his left hand had vanished while blood was spraying out incessantly from his shoulder. Yu Lang and Fan Li weren't in a better state at all. At this moment, they were completely locked in battle with a group of white apes. However, while they were in a difficult situation, it wasn't as terrible as Lin Ning. Li Qingyi surprised Yang Yi a little because she was actually fighting both those enormous mutated white apes on her own. After all, they were equivalent to high-rank Exalt Realm experts. Moreover, they were very strong. At the very least, they were much stronger than the Exalt Realm demon beasts of Profounder Continent. However, Li Qingyi was only at the mid-rank of the Exalt Realm, yet she was able to single-handedly fight two of them who were a rank higher than herself. Yang Yi had no doubt that she was the strongest amongst this group. Meanwhile, white apes surged over incessantly. They didn't attack chaotically, and they slowly surrounded Li Qingyi's group in an orderly fashion. They're accumulating strength and creating pressure for them. The corners of Yang Ye's eyes twitched slightly. These white apes were even more terrifying when they didn't charge directly at their enemies, because they were slowly surrounding their enemies, and it would undoubtedly make Li Qingyi and the others stay constantly vigilant towards their surroundings. Such a method would gradually cause Li Qingyi's group to suffer from mental pressure. This incident isn't normal. Yang Yi withdrew his attention and glanced at the surroundings. After that, he took Fan Meng's hand and pulled her up onto a tree on their left. After that, he spoke in a low voice. "Hold your breath and concentrate. Don't make a sound." After what she experienced earlier, Fan Meng could be said to have slight blind confidence towards Yang Yi. So she immediately did as he said. Yang Yi didn't spare a glance at Li Qingyi and the others. He released his senses instead and scanned the surroundings. His current strength allowed the energy of his soul to envelop an area of at least 5 kilometers. Unfortunately, he hadn't been able to detect anything after a short while of searching. Meanwhile, the white apes had fully surrounded Li Qingyi's group. They just stood in the surroundings yet didn't charge forward, and they started howling incessantly instead. Yang Yi withdrew his attention from the battle and gazed at Fan Meng. "Do you have energy stones? The more the better. Give them all to me." He was at the mid-rank of the first heaven realm now, and he wasn't too far from the king realm. He only had to attain it and he would have the ability to protect himself. Perhaps it was extremely difficult for others to improve their cultivations, but it wasn't difficult at all to him, because he'd attained those realms of cultivation in the past. Regardless of whether it was his mental state or comprehensions, he possessed them both. All he lacked was spirit energy. So long as he could absorb sufficient spirit energy, then it wouldn't be difficult at all for him to raise his cultivation to the peak of the monarch realm. Energy stones? Fan Meng was stunned, and then she quickly produced a huge pile of energy stones and said, "These are all that I have." "Oh, they're yours now." Yang Yi was delighted when he saw them because there actually were 10 extreme-grade energy stones in the pile while the rest were top-grade energy stones. There were over 1,000 of them. "My clan has a low-grade spirit vein, so we have no lack for these things. I can give even more to you once we return," said Fan Meng. "That's not a bad idea." As soon as he finished speaking, Yang Yi picked them up and started swallowing them while Fan Meng watched with astonishment. Fan Meng was flabbergasted. A long time passed before she gulped. "That doesn't seem like the right way to use them." Yang Yi robbed his eyes at her. He naturally knew that it wasn't the right way. But what else could he do? It was the only way he could use them. He didn't explain and just swallowed a few more. As soon as they entered his body, they instantly transformed into countless strands of profound energy. And then the profound energy was further converted into threads of violet profound energy. In next to no time, Yang Yi attained the high rank of the first heaven realm, and he was only a step away from the king realm. Bang! Suddenly, Lin Ning wasn't able to react in time, and he was struck on the back by a white ape. A shrill cry resounded as his figure was blasted flying. Young Miss Li, save me. Lin Ning couldn't be bothered about maintaining an elegant demeanor when he saw the white apes charging at him, and he ran as he cried for help. Meanwhile, Fan Li and Li Qingyi weren't doing good as well. Both of them were holding on bitterly, and both defeat and death were only a matter of time. Fan Meng naturally couldn't just stand by idly when her older sister was surrounded by so many enemies. Right when she was about to charge down the tree, Yang Yi stopped her and said, "If you head down there with your current strength, then you won't just be unable to save her, you'll even cause trouble for her and quicken her death. But I can't just watch like this." Fan Meng glanced at Yang Yi and spoke softly. "Yang Yi, you are that strong, so you're definitely able to save my big sister, right? I know that her attitude towards you was bad, but she didn't have any ill intent. She was just worried about me. If you're really angry, then I'll apologize on her behalf. Or you can even hit me to vent. But please save her. All right? She didn't have ill intent?" Yang Yi shook his head. "Right? She has been trying to kill me on numerous occasions all along the way. Yet that isn't ill intent?" Yang Yi shook his head decisively and said, "Even you should have noticed that I'm so weak right now. I'd be giving my life away if I head down there now. I can't do anything for her." He was telling the truth. He was only at the high rank of the first heaven realm right now. It wouldn't be a problem for him to kill some white apes if he went down there. But that was completely useless. After all, there were over 1,000 of them here. "You can do like you did earlier," Fan Meng hurriedly said. "I'll provide the profound energy and sword intent while you hold my hand. We can join forces again." Yang Yi remained silent. Fan Meng was only at the spirit realm, but because she used the sword as well, he really could use her as a medium to execute powerful techniques. However, he didn't want to save them. No, it should be said that he might even kill them himself once he recovered his strength. The thing he hated the most was people showing off in front of him, and it just so happened that they were constantly doing that. Yang Yi still remained silent. Fan Meng lowered her head and spoke softly. "I know that you're definitely angry at my big sister, and I know that your anger is justified after how she treated you. But I can't just watch as she dies. Yang Yi, I beg you to save her, all right?" Yang Yi gazed at Fan Meng for a short while, and he sighed softly when he recalled how she blocked that strike of Fan Li's whip for him. "They are acting quite strangely. If I'm not wrong, then someone is definitely controlling them, or there's a powerful demon beast commanding them. It's pointless no matter how many we kill. The only way to survive is to flee with all-out might. Your older sister and that woman, Li Qingyi, definitely have trump cards. Make them utilize those trump cards immediately and charge towards the south." Fan Meng was delighted, and she hurriedly shouted at Li Qingyi and the others, Big sister Li, quickly use your trump cards and run to the south." Yang Ye's face darkened. She really lacks common sense. How could they possibly believe her just like that? As expected, Li Qingyi and Fan Li paid no attention to her. Moreover, Fan Li even glared at her. Besides that, her shout had caused some of the white apes that surrounded Li Qingyi's group to pounce at Yang Yi and her. Fan Meng blinked while she gazed at Yang Yi with an innocent expression on her face. Yang Yi glanced at her. He was naturally aware that she was forcing him to help. He shook his head, gazed at Li Qingyi, and then his lips suddenly started moving. At the same time, an aged voice suddenly resounded in Li Qingyi's mind. "You fool! If you don't want to die, then immediately use your trump card and fight your way out towards the south. Stop fighting with those two big fellows and lead them away as quickly as possible." A voice transmission. Li Qingyi's expression changed, and then she glanced at the surroundings yet noticed nothing. Her expression became extremely solemn because one had to be at the Exalt realm at least to send out voice transmissions. In other words, there was another Exalt realm expert here. Moreover, even she wasn't able to locate that expert. That represented that this mysterious expert's strength might be beyond her own. Suddenly, that aged voice resounded once more by her ears. "Just use your brain and think. These demon beasts were clearly lying in ambush here. That shows that someone is targeting your group. Now, they are in the shadows while you are out in the open. They'll definitely have a backup plan, even if you can kill these two Exalt Realm demon beasts. Even though she was fighting those two white apes, her gaze was incessantly sweeping the surroundings. Unfortunately, there wasn't anyone suspicious throughout the surroundings. AH! Suddenly, Lin Ning's shrill cry resounded. All of them looked over and saw that Lin Ning's right leg had actually been torn off. Li Qingyi stopped hesitating when she witnessed this scene. Her profound energy surged into her palms, and then she slapped them forward. Void Shadow Palm. As soon as she finished speaking, the space before her trembled, and then countless shadow palms shot out from her palms. Both the Exalt Realm white apes before her were immediately blasted flying, while the other inferior white apes nearby were either killed or injured. Let's go! Li Qingyi flashed over to Li Ning. She carried him up, flickered a few times, and vanished towards the south. Yu Lang hastily followed them. On the other hand, Fan Li went over to Fan Meng, and she was just about to take Fan Meng with her when Fan Meng pointed at Yang Yi. Big sister, take him too or I won't go with you? Yang Yi was rather touched when he heard this. While she was very crafty, she had a good heart. Fan Li was exasperated, but she didn't have the time to reproach Fan Meng at a time like this. She glared fiercely at Yang Yi instead, and it was a murderous one. In the end, she grabbed Fan Meng and Yang Yi in each of her hands before flashing towards the south. However, Yang Yi suddenly glanced towards a certain direction when they left. A pair of eyes were looking at him from there, and they carried a trace of surprise. The white apes didn't pursue them. They stopped on the spot and laid flat on the ground. Even the two Exalt Realm white apes. 2 breaths of time later, a woman who rode a lion which was covered in flames arrived here. She wore a violet robe, and her violet gauze veil obscured her appearance. Interesting. Someone at the high rank of the First Heaven Realm actually noticed me. The woman's voice resounded. Yang Ye's jaw would definitely drop to the ground if he heard her, because she'd seen through his strength. They dashed towards the south, and they ran for over 50 kilometers before they finally stopped. Bang! As soon as they did, Fan Li tossed Yang Yi away, and he smashed against the ground and caused a huge amount of dust and dirt to shoot up into the air. Fan Meng was shocked and was about to help Yang Yi up. However, Fan Li forcefully held her back and glared fiercely at him. But Fan Meng acted in an unexpectedly forceful manner and pushed Fan Li's hand away before going over to Yang Yi and helping him up. The killing intent in Fan Li's eyes was almost material when she witnessed this scene. Yang Yi was looking at Fan Li as well, and he gradually clenched his fist while the unfettered one's sword intent started trembling within his mind. So long as she fared to move against him, then he would definitely obliterate her. Save me! Save me! Meanwhile, Lin Ning's voice resounded. All of them looked over and saw him howling as he laid on the ground. He'd lost an arm and a leg, and while the bleeding had been stopped, they had no doubt that he couldn't fight anymore. Unless he had a medicinal pill or treasure that could regrow his limbs, otherwise he was crippled. Li Qingyi shook her head as she gazed at him. She knew that Lin Ning was finished, because Lin Ning didn't have such a treasure or pill, and he couldn't even afford one. Young Miss Fan, I know you definitely have a spirit regrowth pill. Please, please save me. I'm willing to do anything for your Fan clan. Lin Ning gazed at Fan Li with a pleading expression in his eyes. Li Qingyi shook her head when she witnessed this scene, and her impression of Lin Ning had dropped to a negative level. Fan Yi shook her head as well. The Fan clan did have such a pill, but she didn't want to give it to Lin Ning, because it wasn't worth it. After all, so long as she willed it, she could use such a pill to recruit a high-rank Exalt Realm expert. Brother Yu, Brother Yu. Lin Ning gazed at Yu Lang, who remained silent until now. Brother Yu, we've known each other for quite some time. Please lend me a hand. I will definitely not forget your kindness. Yu Lang fell silent for a short while, and then he gazed at Li Qingyi. Young Miss Li, Brother Li and I entered Broken Sky Mountain Range to help you deal with the golden-striped spirit ape. Now that he has fallen into such a state, I hope that young Miss Li will lend a hand. Otherwise, only death will await him in this boundless mountain range. Li Qingyi glanced at Yu Lang and spoke flatly. I paid half your compensation before we came here, and I told you of the dangers of this trip. However, both of you still accepted the payment. What? Now that something has happened, you intend to blame it all on me? Yu Lang hurriedly shook his head and said, I dare not. It's that we can't just watch as Brother Li dies. Right? Li Qingyi fell silent for a long time before she said, The spirit regrowth pill is a spirit pill, and I'm sure you know how precious such a pill is. Just that pill alone is sufficient for me to make 3 Exalt Realm experts fight a battle for me. However, you're right. We can't just watch Brother Li die. So why don't we do this? I'll convert the pill into extreme-grade energy stones, and we'll each bear half the costs. All right? It isn't very expensive. It's just around 1,000 extreme-grade energy stones. You just have to pay 500 extreme-grade energy stones. 500 extreme-grade energy stones. Yu Lang's eyelids twitched. It wasn't a small amount to him. He was naturally capable of producing such an amount if he sold everything he had. But was it worth it? Yu Lang fell silent. Everyone else fell silent as well, including Lin Ning. Suddenly, Fan Meng said, We should save him. Everyone including Yang Yi looked at her when they heard her. Fan Meng explained, We're a group now. If we abandon him now, then a crack will appear in our group, and we'll fear each other and be on guard against each other. At this moment, we're facing an unknown enemy. Do you think we'll be able to leave this mountain range if there are issues within our own group? So, even if it's for our own sake, we still have to save him. Everyone gazed at Fan Meng for a short while, and then Li Qingyi suddenly chuckled. Young Miss Fan, I really never noticed that this little girl from your clan was actually capable of thinking so far ahead. How truly interesting. There was a trace of a smile and gentleness in Fan Li's eyes because Fan Meng's ability to think of that proved that she'd grown up. There was gratefulness in Lin Ning's eyes because he knew that he would be saved. Li Qingyi withdrew a pill and gave it to Lin Ning. Of course, everyone here shared the cost equally. Lin Ning's hand and leg started to grow at a visible speed. Meanwhile, Li Qingyu suddenly gazed at Yang Yi and said, You didn't want us to head in that direction earlier. How did you know that there was danger there? The others instantly gazed at Yang Yi when they heard her. Yang Yi glanced at them and said, I told all of you, I'm able to sense danger. I sensed that there was danger in that direction, and that's why I said that. Really? Li Qingyi was slightly doubtful. Yang Yi said, What else? How presumptuous! Meanwhile, Lin Ning, who'd regrown his limbs, shouted with fury. How dare you talk to young Miss Li like that? Did he say something wrong? Fan Meng stood in front of Yang Yi and glared angrily at Lin Ning. He was slightly stunned when he saw her protecting Yang Yi, and then he said, Young Miss Fan Meng, you must remember your identity. You're the second young miss of the Fan clan. If news of you protecting a servant like this were to spread, it would be bad for your reputation. It's none of your business. Fan Meng grunted coldly and said, To think that I just spoke on your behalf. I really wasted my breath on you. The expression on Lin Ning's face became unsightly, but he didn't dare flare up at Fan Meng, and he just glared fiercely at Yang Yi. Fan Li glanced coldly at Yang Yi as well, and her gaze was even more hostile. Li Qingyi took a deep and long glance at Yang Yi, and then she said, Forget it. No matter what, we're all on the same boat now, so let's not cause conflict amongst us. When she spoke up to this point, she raised her head, looked up into the sky, and then her jet-black brows knit together. Night is about to arrive, and that's when the demon beasts are the most active. We must find a place to rest and set out in the morning for Spirit Ape Mountain. Meanwhile, Lin Ning hesitated for a moment before he said, Young Miss Li, we're still continuing on our journey? Li Qingyi glanced coldly at him and said, What? Lin Ning instantly shuddered when he met her gaze, but he still said, Young Miss Li, those white apes were clearly waiting to ambush us. In other words, someone or some demon beast is targeting us. If we don't figure it out and just head straight for Spirit Ape Mountain, then we'll probably die before we even get there. Yu Lang nodded to display his agreement. Li Qingyi replied indifferently, Both of you can leave, but hand over the deposit I gave both of you." Lin Ning and Yu Lang instantly revealed embarrassed expressions when they heard that. A short while passed before Lin Ning said, "Since we've taken young Miss Li's money, then we naturally have to complete the job." "But—" "There are no buts." Li Qingyi interrupted them and said, "No matter how dangerous it is, we must go to Spirit Ape Mountain. I will definitely compensate both of you well if we can obtain what I need." Lin Ning and Yu Lang exchanged glances, and then they nodded. They naturally didn't dare to go back on their word. After all, not to mention the forces that stood behind Li Qingyi, just her own strength wasn't something they could resist. When she saw that they had no further objections, Li Qingyi gazed at Fan Li. The latter spoke solemnly, "I don't have a choice." Li Qingyi nodded and said, "Don't worry, young Miss Fan. So long as I'm able to succeed, then I'll step forward and resolve the threats of the Yi clan. However, I hope young Miss Fan won't hold back when I need you to pay that price tomorrow." "Of course." Fan Li nodded. They continued on their journey, and Li Qingyi finally found a basin. It wasn't very huge, and it was only around 300 m in width and length. There was a dense forest all around it, and there was a distance of over 30 m between the basin's edges and the forest. They naturally didn't dare rest in the forest, so they chose the side of the basin. Yang Yi glanced up at the sky. While the veil of night had descended, he could still see the endless mountains in the distance. He was even more certain that Skywind City was surrounded by endless mountains. While he hadn't noticed any formidable demon beasts in these mountains for now, he had no doubt that Monarch Realm demon beasts definitely existed here. In other words, even if he attained the King Realm, it wouldn't be easy for him to leave the mountain range. Of course, it wasn't very difficult. Yang Yi didn't sit with Li Qingyi and the others, and he went slightly far away from them. He sat cross-legged on the ground and ceaselessly swallowed the energy stones in his possession, and then converted them into his violet, profound energy. Late at night, the mountains weren't very calm anymore. The roars of countless demon beasts resounded deep within the mountains. Some of the roars were close while others were far away, but the members of their group weren't bothered by it because all those demon beasts were mostly at the King Realm. There were only one or two at the Exalt Realm. As for the Monarch Realm, there wasn't a single one. Suddenly, Fan Li appeared in front of Yang Yi. Yang Yi opened his eyes and gazed at her. The latter looked at him for a long time before she said, "I don't know why little Meng is so protective of you, but all I want to say is that my younger sister is very naive, but I'm not at all." Huff. Meanwhile, Yang Yi let out a breath of foul air, while a wisp of happiness flashed through his eyes. After he swallowed all the top-grade energy stones he'd finally attained the King Realm. He suppressed the happiness in his heart when he heard her. And then he slowly stood up and looked her in the eyes. "What are you trying to say?" Fan Li said, "Aren't you getting close to her and gaining her favor for the sake of wealth? Don't tell me that it wasn't you who tricked her and took all her energy stones." As she spoke, she withdrew a spatial ring and threw it onto the ground before Yang Yi. She continued, "There are 500 top-grade energy stones in there. It's enough for you to live 10 lifetimes. Take it and fuck off right now. Don't ever appear before my eyes. Otherwise, you won't be able to enjoy death even if you beg for it." Yang Yi glanced at the spatial ring before his feet, and then he said, "The reason you're still alive is because you have a naive little sister. Because you have a naive little sister, I'll give you a chance right now. Return my sword sheath to me, and then I'll leave. Otherwise, you'll be begging to make me leave." Fan Li hadn't even spoken when Lin Ning suddenly pointed his finger at Yang Yi and roared with fury, "How dare you? You dog! Who do you think you are to actually speak like that to young Miss Fan?" Swish! Suddenly, a ray of light flashed. Besides Li Qingyi, Fan Li and the others weren't able to catch sight of it because it was truly too swift. At this moment, the calm and composed expression on Li Qingyi's face had vanished. She gazed at Yang Yi with disbelief while her heart roiled like boiling water. Lin Ning was still scolding Yang Yi, but as he scolded and scolded, he suddenly realized that everyone was looking at him. So he stopped and glanced at the others. He was just about to say something when he suddenly looked at his left arm with shock. At this moment, his newly grown left arm had actually fallen to the ground. Ah! A shrill and miserable cry resounded through the quiet basin, and it caused ripples to surge through it. Fan Meng's mouth opened wide when she witnessed this scene. She knew that Yang Yi was definitely very strong, but she hadn't imagined that he was actually strong to such an extent. Lin Ning is an Exalt Realm expert, but he couldn't even dodge a single attack from him? Fan Meng couldn't help but be flabbergasted. Even Li Qingyi, Fan Li, and Yu Lang were stunned. Yang Yi paid no attention to the others. He walked towards Fan Li and said, "Give the sheath back to me." Fan Li recovered from her shock, and then she flipped her palm, causing a whip to appear in her grasp. The profound energy within her surged as she shouted, "Who are you?" It wasn't just Fan Li. Even Li Qingyi and Yu Lang's profound energy had started to surge. They were on guard and prepared to attack at any moment. Yang Yi continued walking towards Fan Li and said, "That isn't important. I just want my sword sheath back. Give it back and I'll leave right now." A cold glow flashed through Fan Li's eyes. Suddenly, the whip in her hand crackled through the air as it shot towards Yang Yi. However, it hadn't even arrived in front of Yang Yi when it was slashed into half by a ray of light. Fan Li was horrified. Meanwhile, Yang Yi was in front of her, and then she felt sharp pain come from her stomach before her figure was blasted flying. Bang! Fan Li smashed against a tree and crashed to the ground, causing the entire ground there to tremble. Li Qingyi and Yu Lang's expressions changed. They were about to act when Yang Yi suddenly looked at them, and he said, "Move and you die! How dare you!" Yu Lang roared furiously and was about to attack. Suddenly, a ray of light flashed, and then Yu Lang's figure stiffened on the spot. An instant later, his head was pushed into the air by a fountain of blood. Li Qingyi's pupils constricted, and she was stunned on the spot. "Who exactly are you?" Meanwhile, Fan Li had stood up and was staring fixedly at Yang Yi. Yang Yi didn't answer her. He took a step forward, and merely this step allowed him to instantly arrive in front of Fan Li. After that, Fan Li felt something press down on her throat, and she was almost suffocated. Yang Yi! Fan Meng was horrified when she witnessed this scene, and she quickly called out to him. Yang Ye's figure stopped moving. He pondered deeply for an instant, and then he slowly let go of her. He gazed at Fan Li and shook his head. "The reason you're still alive now isn't because you're beautiful, and it isn't because you're smart either. It's because you have a naive little sister. I don't want to waste my breath on you. Hand the sheath over. Otherwise, I don't mind searching your corpse." Fan Meng quickly ran over to Fan Li, supported her up and said, "Big sister, that sword sheath is his. Just give it back to him. Otherwise, he'll really kill you." As she spoke, there was a trace of fear in her eyes as she gazed at Yang Yi. She hadn't expected that this man who seemed so gentle and amiable would actually be so ruthless when he fought. Fan Li raised her head to look at Yang Yi, but Yang Yi didn't look at her. He looked towards the depths of the forest instead. This time, Fan Li didn't hesitate to flip her palm, and the ancient sheath appeared there. Yang Yi withdrew his gaze from the forest, made a gesture, and the sword sheath returned into his grasp. There was a trace of pain and complicated emotions in his eyes as he gazed at the sword sheath. He knew that the sword spirit had definitely fallen into deep sleep because he executed Heavenrend, and the only way to awaken her was to feed his sword intent to her. Unfortunately, his current sword intent was only at the first level. "Looks like I have to think about how to recover my sword intent." Yang Yi held the ancient sheath in his hand as he turned around and walked away. However, he merely took a few steps before he suddenly stopped walking. The expressions on the faces of Fan Li, Li Qingyi, and Lin Ning, who was howling on the ground, changed drastically when they saw him stop. Yang Yi glanced at the surroundings, and then he turned to look at Fan Meng. "It's very dangerous here. Staying with them is equivalent to walking on a path towards death. If you are willing, you can leave with me. I'll take you out of this mountain range." Fan Meng was first delighted, but it didn't take long for the happiness on her face to vanish. She glanced at her older sister and said, Can you take my big sister as well?" Yang Yi shook his head. while his strength had recovered to the king realm, and he could even defeat some Exalt realm experts. However, he wasn't invincible. If he were to be surrounded by an army of demon beasts, then even if they couldn't kill him, they could exhaust him to death. Moreover, he didn't have a good impression of Fan Li at all. So why would he waste his time and energy to save her? He wasn't stupid. I don't need him. Fan Li stared fixedly at Yang Yi, and her eyes had killing intent within them. Bang! Fan Li had just finished speaking when her figure was blasted flying, and she only stopped flying after breaking numerous trees. You're courting death. Fan Li had a ferocious expression on her face when she stood up, and the profound energy within her surged madly, causing a powerful aura to sweep out from her. After that, she swiftly swung her whip at Yang Yi. Heaven Ravager! The whip was like an enormous dragon, and it was nimble like a snake as it tore through the sky and shook the space around it. Fan Meng's face turned pale with fright, because it was a Dao rank technique. It was the Fan clan's strongest technique. However, a ray of light suddenly flashed. It was extremely tiny when compared to the whip, but when the sword energy came into contact with the whip, it unexpectedly crushed the aura on the whip and immediately sliced it into half. But the sword energy didn't disperse. It instantly arrived before Fan Li, who was beyond shocked. No! Fan Meng's face turned ghastly pale while terror filled her eyes. As soon as her voice resounded, the sword energy which was about to shoot through Fan Li's forehead suddenly stopped. Li Qingyi's pupils constricted into the size of needles when she witnessed this scene, and her hands couldn't help but tremble. While Yang Ye's sword energy wasn't enhanced by sword intent, such a scene shocked her to the extreme, because Yang Yi was actually able to control sword energy which had left him. One had to attain the 9th level of sword intent and gain material sword intent at the very least in order to be able to accomplish that. But Yang Ye's sword energy didn't carry a trace of sword intent. So what did that prove? It proved that this fellow before her, Yang Yi, had concealed his strength. The 9th level of sword intent. There might not be a single person with such sword intent anywhere near here. After she recovered from her shock, all sorts of thoughts appeared in Li Qingyi's mind, and a blazing expression of desire appeared in her eyes. At this moment, Fan Li's shock wasn't much lesser than Li Qingyi. She hadn't imagined that her strongest attack would be so weak before this fellow, who she called a servant of her clan. Fan Meng stood in front of that strand of sword energy, and she gazed at Yang Yi as she said, I know that my big sister's attitude towards you wasn't good, but she did that for my sake. Yang Yi, if you really want to vent, then kill me? Vent. Yang Yi shook his head and said, to be honest, she isn't even qualified to make me angry. When he spoke up to this point, he gazed at Fan Li, who was glaring angrily at him. Don't look at me with such a murderous gaze, because people have done that to me in the past, and their corpses have been transformed into dirt by now. As soon as he finished speaking, he turned around and walked away with the ancient sheath in his grasp. Please wait a moment. Suddenly, Li Qingyi cried out to him. Yang Yi stopped moving, turned around to look at her, and then he said, What? You're from the ancient sword school, right? Li Qingyi's eyes had slight excitement in them. Yang Yi frowned and said, Speak about what you want. She was overjoyed when she saw him tacitly admit it. Brother Yang, I mainly came here to this mountain range for a single thing. So long as Brother Yang lends me a hand, then I'm willing to provide a generous reward. What? I've become Brother Yang now? I'm not that servant anymore. Yang Yi spoke indifferently. Li Qingyi wasn't infuriated by his ridicule. She smiled and said, Status naturally changes according to one's strength. I was ignorant earlier and wasn't able to recognize Brother Yang's ability. I apologize. Yang Yi waved his hand and said, There's no need for apologies. Out of consideration for little Meng, I'll give you a piece of advice. Leave right now and perhaps you'll still be in time. Otherwise, you won't be able to leave even if you want to. Li Qingyi's expression changed slightly, and she said, Brother Yang, have you noticed something? Yang Yi didn't speak. He just walked forward with the ancient sheath in hand. Meanwhile, Li Qingyi spoke once more. Brother Yang, Even if you don't care about young Miss Fan, young Master Li, and I, but Brother Yang wouldn't just disregard young Miss Fan Meng as well, right? Yang Yi stopped when he heard this. Li Qingyi instantly heaved a sigh of relief when she saw him stop, and she glanced at Fan Meng. It's all thanks to that little girl. Yang Yi turned around to gaze at Fan Meng. Meanwhile, Fan Meng glanced at him before she slowly lowered her head. Yang Yi sighed softly, and then he flashed over to Fan Meng. Fan Li's expression changed, and she took a step forward and stood in front of Fan Meng. She hadn't even spoken a word when a strand of sword energy was pressing against the center of her forehead, and a droplet of blood slowly seeped out from there. Fuck off! Yang Yi glanced coldly at her. Fan Li's face twitched. She was about to speak when Fan Meng pulled Fan Li behind her, and then she gazed at Yang Yi. You leave on your own. I can't abandon my big sister. Yang Yi withdrew his sword energy, and then he rubbed Fan Meng's head. She's so fierce to you. What are you being so good to her? Fan Meng shook her head. Big sister has had a tough life. She has done too much for the Fan clan and me. You can leave on your own. I can't burden you. Yang Yi shook his head. It's too late to leave now. As he spoke, his gaze gradually became solemn. Roar. Suddenly, the furious roar of a beast resounded through the night sky, and then countless roars of fury resounded incessantly. Rumble. The forest around them suddenly started to shake. It didn't take long for Li Qingyi and the others to notice that pairs of blood-red eyes had suddenly appeared all around them. Besides those blood-red eyes, Li Qingyi and the others couldn't see anything else throughout the veil of night. Their expressions changed slightly, and Fan Meng was even terrified to the point of hurriedly pulling her older sister with her and hiding behind Yang Yi. It didn't take long for a woman who rode a flaming lion to appear within their fields of vision. The Beast Master Sect. The corners of Li Qingyi's eyes twitched slightly when she saw the woman, and her eyes flickered with shock and ghastly killing intent. The Beastmaster Sect is a silver-rank sect, and it's a sword enemy of Stellar Sky City. Perhaps their own strength might not be very formidable, but they can sign all sorts of agreements with various powerful demon beasts. Not only are they able to bring forth powerful strength with the assistance of those demon beasts, they are even able to rely on the demon beasts to execute some special joint attacks. You must not underestimate her. Fan Meng walked over to Yang Yi and spoke softly. The woman in a violet dress robed the flaming lion to a distance of 100 m before Yang Yi and the others, and then she spoke slowly. Young Miss Li led numerous experts of Stellar Sky City to search for monkey wine. Yet you sneaked out from the group and traveled 5,000 kilometers to Skywind City on your own. That plan of yours almost deceived my sect. I never expected that there would actually be a spy in the forces of my city. Moreover, it seems like that spy's status isn't low at all, said Li Qingyi. The woman pointed at the surroundings and said, because I was aware of young Miss Li's arrival, I temporarily subdued all the demon beasts in an area of 50 kilometers. Don't worry, I won't kill you. A living successor of Stellar Sky City is more valuable than a dead one. So, will you follow me on your own accord, or should I take you with me by force? As she spoke, she waved her hand, and then 2 white apes and 5 huge wolves appeared by her side. All of them were at the Exalt realm. Fan Li and Fan Meng's countenances instantly turned ghastly pale while Lin Ning, who laid on the ground, shouted, I surrender. Senior from the Beastmaster Sect, please spare me? Lin Ning's voice stopped abruptly because an energy palm suddenly descended onto his head, causing it to explode apart. It was Li Qingyi who launched the attack. Li Qingyi spoke coldly, Damn it! Fan Meng and Fan Li glanced at Li Qingyi while a trace of vigilance appeared in their eyes. This is between the Beastmaster Sect and Stellar Sky City. I don't want to interfere in it. As soon as he finished speaking, Yang Yi walked off while holding Fan Meng's hand. Meanwhile, Fan Meng held tightly onto Fan Li's hand while cautiously glancing at Yang Yi, as she was very afraid that he would abandon her older sister. The woman suddenly said, You're leaving just like that? Yang Yi stopped and turned around to look at her. What? You want to treat me to some roast meat? Yang Yi glanced at the flaming lion below the woman while he spoke. Roar. The lion roared furiously when it heard Yang Yi. and its roar was filled with boundless rage. Moreover, strands of flames sprayed out incessantly from it and caused the air around it to crackle. The woman gazed at Xianxia for a short while before she said, "You seem to be very confident in your strength? Or perhaps you're very confident in your backing." Xianxia replied, "Based on what you said, your objective is only young Miss Li. Since it's like that, why don't you just let us go?" She asked, "What if I don't? Why don't you give it a try? Then I will." As soon as she finished speaking, an explosion resounded as a dark blue python suddenly charged out from the basin by their side. The python was like the size of a hill, its eyes were like two watermelons, and it opened up its huge mouth as it shot towards Xianxia's group. Fan Li was horrified, and Fan Meng's face had turned ghastly pale when they saw the python. She held tightly onto Fan Li's arm while her eyes were closed tightly. A cold glow flashed through Xianxia's eyes, and he gestured, "Sword, come to me." As soon as he spoke, a sword howl resounded from the sword that hung on Fan Meng's waist, and it appeared in Xianxia's grasp. Xianxia stomped the ground with his right foot and transformed into a ray of light that shot up into the air and through the python's mouth. After that, numerous rays of sword energy criss-crossed through the air. A moment later, Xianxia descended to the ground, and he stabbed the sword into the ground in front of him. Pooh! They watched with shock as the dark blue python fell towards the basin below. However, it wasn't whole anymore when it fell. It was in pieces. All of them were flabbergasted, including the woman in a violet dress. Her eyes had shock and seriousness in them, and there was a trace of strong fear as well. Li Qingyi took a deep and long glance at Xianxia. There was fear in her eyes as well, but there was even more happiness there. Fan Meng's eyes glowed as she gazed at him, and they were filled with adoration. On the other hand, Fan Li instinctively took 2 steps back, and besides fear, there was even a trace of reverence in her eyes. Besides them, even the demon beasts in the surroundings were shocked by Xianxia's ability. They stopped roaring and started looking at Xianxia with vigilance instead. Even the flaming lion beneath the women had strong vigilance in its eyes, because that python was at the Exalt realm. How could they not be shocked when he instantly annihilated an Exalt realm demon beast? Xianxia gazed at the woman and asked, "Do you still want to give it a try?" The woman spoke solemnly, "You're from the ancient sword school?" "Yes." Xianxia didn't hesitate at all. It wasn't that he wanted to pretend to be a member of the ancient sword school, he just had no choice but to say so. Because while he'd restored his cultivation to the king realm, his injuries hadn't been healed at all. His meridians were healing very slowly when being nurtured by his violet profound energy. So, his meridians were still in pieces right now. Forcefully utilizing sword energy earlier had caused the meridians within his body to warp, and the sharp pain from it was utterly indescribable. If his meridians hadn't been tempered by primordial violet energy and the dragon ancestors' blood in the past, just utilizing sword energy earlier would have caused his meridians to be turned into powder. So, even if he seemed to be completely carefree right now, and even seemed like he treated the woman and the demon beasts as ants, he was actually on the verge of howling from the sharp pain from his warped meridians. But he had no other choice but to continue acting. The woman in a violet dress wasn't the only one who felt shocked upon hearing Xianxia. Even Li Qingyi, Fan Li, and Fan Meng were the same. After all, the ancient sword school was like a legendary existence in Pine Prefecture, because the ancient sword school was a platinum rank sect. Moreover, platinum rank sects were the strongest in Pine Prefecture. The woman in a violet dress asked, "The ancient sword school has 9 peaks that are situated throughout Pine Prefecture. May I ask which peak you're from?" "The strongest peak. Heavenly Sword Peak," Fan Meng gasped. Meanwhile, the eyes of Fan Li, Li Qingyi, and the woman opened wide with shock. "Heavenly Sword Peak has..." She intended to continue with more questions, but Xianxia suddenly said, "What's with all the crap? If you want to fight, then do it quickly. To be honest, my sword thirsts for blood." As he spoke, he waved his right hand and the sword before him trembled violently before a ray of light shot into the sky. It tore through the sky like a bolt of lightning, and it was dazzling and resplendent, The woman's eyelids twitched. She was very afraid that Yang Yi would attack, so she quickly said, "Since you're from the ancient sword school, then Xianxia would naturally not dare to act rashly. You can leave as you please." Yang Yi nodded, and then he turned around and walked away. The woman called Xianxia frowned when she saw him act like that, and then a wisp of surprise flashed through her eyes. Meanwhile, Yang Yi suddenly stopped moving. He turned around to gaze at her. "Wouldn't I be bringing shame to my ancient sword school if I leave just like that? Never mind. I haven't killed in a long time, so I'll feed all of you to my sword." Yang Yi was about to act while he spoke, and Xianxia was horrified by this. She quickly said, "My Beastmaster sect has no intention to be disrespectful to the ancient sword school. Everything that occurred earlier was a misunderstanding. How could I dare to make things difficult for you if I knew that you were from the ancient sword school? You expect me to just let bygones be bygones?" Yang Yi spoke ferociously, and the killing intent in his eyes was seemingly material. It seemed like he would carry out slaughter at any moment. Xianxia pondered deeply for an instant, and then she flicked with her wrist. A spatial ring appeared in front of Yang Yi as she said, "There are 500 extreme-grade energy stones and the inner cores of 100 Exalt Realm demon beasts in there. Please do accept these small gifts as my apology to you." Yang Yi glanced at her before he gestured with his right hand, and the spatial ring flew into his grasp. He said, "If I didn't have important matters to attend to, then I might have even roasted and enjoyed that lion below you." As soon as he finished speaking, he took Fan Meng with him as he turned around and left. Fan Meng, on the other hand, held tightly onto Fan Li. Li Qingyi hurriedly followed them. Xianxia was about to say something when she witnessed this scene. However, Li Qingyi suddenly turned around and said, "I'm his woman. Head back to your sect and tell your sect master that if he wants to act against my stellar sky city, then he has to first think about the consequences." As soon as she finished speaking, she glanced at Xianxia with ridicule before swiftly following behind Yang Ye's group. Xianxia's eyes could almost spray flames from the rage she felt, and her chest was rising and falling rapidly. She was clearly furious. As she watched Yang Ye's group vanish beneath the veil of night, Xianxia took a deep breath and calmed the rage in her heart. Right when she was about to turn around and leave, a thought suddenly appeared in her mind. She fell silent on the spot for some time, and her brows gradually creased together. A long time passed before she suddenly opened her eyes. "Damn it! I fell for his trick. He isn't a disciple of the ancient sword school." Roar! Countless furious beast howls resounded once more throughout the tranquil mountain range, and then the entire area started to quake. After they left the woman's field of vision, Yang Yi immediately flashed over to Li Qingyi's back, and then he jumped on her back. After that, Yang Yi spat out 3 mouthfuls of blood and instantly dyed her clothes red. Fan Li and Feng Meng were astounded while Li Qingyi seemed to have understood something. She said, "We have to leave quickly." As she spoke, her profound energy surged into her legs, and she raised her speed to its limits and transformed into a gust of wind that flashed towards the distance. Fan Meng and Fan Li seemed to have realized something as well, and they quickly chased after Li Qingyi. Yang Ye's body was in quite a bad state right now. If it wasn't for the tempering he experienced from the primordial violet energy, the dragon ancestor's blood, and various other treasures, he might have really died earlier. His body was once comparable to a half-saint, but after he ignited 12 levels of his sword intent and forcefully executed Heavenrend, his body was severely damaged and was practically returned to its original state. While he'd restored his strength to the King Realm just now, the meridians and various injuries within him hadn't been repaired at all. So, when he utilized sword energy by force, the process of transferring profound energy through his meridians had caused his meridians to warp severely. Fortunately, his meridians were very flexible and tough, otherwise, the meridians of any other person would have been shattered into bits. Even though his hadn't been shattered into bits, it was still in a terrible state. The sharp pain from his warped meridians was simply impossible to describe with words. "Stop!" Yang Yi suddenly spoke while they were dashing madly, and Li Qingyi immediately stopped on the spot. Yang Yi forcefully endured the sharp pain that sunk deep to the bones, and his eyes were slightly shut while his divine sense swept out. A short while passed before he pointed to the left. Head in that direction. As soon as he finished speaking, Yang Yi instantly fainted. They looked towards the direction that Yang Yi had pointed towards, and they became slightly hesitant when they noticed what laid in that direction. Because it was a huge swamp, and there were things swimming through the swamp. There were even some powerful auras. I trust him. Fan Meng suddenly made her stand clear. Fan Li glanced at Yang Yi and remained silent. Obviously, she was forfeiting her right to vote. Li Qingyi pondered deeply for a few moments, and then she suddenly gazed at Fan Meng. Tell me the truth. Was it Yang Yi that scared Lu Wufeng off earlier? Fan Meng knew that she couldn't conceal it now, so she immediately nodded. You've probably realized that he suffered a very severe injury. So, when he held me earlier, he was using me as a medium to fight Lu Wufeng. When she spoke up to this point, there was an aggrieved expression in Fan Meng's eyes as she gazed at Fan Li. Fan Li said, Why didn't you tell me? Would you have believed me? Fan Li wanted to say something about it, but Li Qingyi shook her head. Let's not talk about all of that now. He's very strong, and he probably encountered something that made his cultivation drop to such an extent, and he even suffered extremely severe injuries. However, there's no doubt that the discerning ability and judgment of such a person is definitely above ours. So, there's definitely a reason why he chose that direction. Let's go. It didn't take long for them to enter the swamp. Of course, they'd stopped walking and they were flying now. While Li Qingyi and Fan Li could tear space open and teleport through it, they didn't dare to do so within this boundless mountain range, because the slightest mistake could cause them to teleport into the lair of a demon beast. Wouldn't that be no different than giving their lives away? Moreover, teleporting would create fluctuations in space, and Xianxia who was pursuing them would be able to sense those fluctuations. We must wake him up. After they entered the swamp, Li Qingyi suddenly gazed at Fan Li and said, While I have some medicinal pills in my possession, they aren't healing pills. Young Miss Fan, do you still have more blood stasis pills? Yes. It wasn't Fan Li but Fan Meng who spoke those words. Fan Li glanced at Yang Yi, hesitated for a moment, and then flicked a pill over to Li Qingyi. Li Qingyi nodded and flicked it into Yang Ye's mouth. However, Yang Yi still didn't wake up after around 10 minutes passed. How heavy are his injuries? Why is even a spirit pill incapable of showing any effects? Li Qingyi's brows knit tightly together. Feed him energy stones. Fan Meng suddenly said. He wasn't strong in the beginning, but he became strong after eating a huge amount of energy stones. And he wasn't even able to instantly kill that huge snake earlier. Li Qingyi gazed at Fan Meng. Are you sure that energy stones can be eaten? Fan Meng nodded. She wasn't lying because she'd watched him eat them. Li Qingyi pondered deeply for an instant and said, Feed them to him. Just like that, they traveled as they fed extreme-grade energy stones to Yang Yi. After eating almost 1,000 extreme-grade energy stones, Yang Yi still hadn't woken up, but he'd advanced to the mid-rank of the King Realm. Witnessing that caused all three of them to be stunned for a very long time. You can advance from eating energy stones? Li Qingyi gazed at Fan Meng while the latter had a dazed expression on her face. He's a freak, said Fan Li. Li Qingyi nodded with agreement and said, Continue feeding them to him. I don't have any more. Fan Meng shrugged helplessly. Li Qingyi gazed at Fan Li. Fan Li shook her head as well. I didn't bring many with me, and he has finished all that I did. A spatial ring flew over to Fan Meng, while Li Qingyi said, There are almost 1,000 extreme-grade energy stones in there. Feed them to him. Let's see how many he can eat. Fan Meng hurriedly started feeding Yang Yi again. It didn't take long for Yang Yi to finish those energy stones. Yet he still hadn't woken up. Fan Meng gazed at Li Qingyi, and her gaze seemed to carry a question. Do you have any more? Didn't that woman give him a spatial ring just now? Why keep all those extreme-grade energy stones and inner cores from Exalt Realm demon beasts? Feed all of them to him. Let's see if he wakes up from that. Li Qingyi spoke in a low voice. Fan Meng searched Yang Yi for a moment before she finally found that spatial ring. After that, She withdrew its contents and started to feed all of it to Yang Yi. After another 15 minutes passed, Yang Yi still hadn't woken up, but he was at the spirit realm. This time, the three of them were shocked speechless. After all, they'd used a huge amount of time to advance from the king realm to the spirit realm all those years ago. Especially Fan Meng. She'd used quite a few years of time to advance from the first heaven realm to the spirit realm. But Yang Yi just advanced from eating energy stones. If it hadn't occurred right before her eyes, then she would never believe it. Bang! Suddenly, a torrent of dirt shot up from within the swamp, and then a bloody mouth bit at them. A cold glow flashed through Li Qingyi's eyes as she flipped her palm, and a huge energy palm flashed down. The palm caused ripples to sweep through space before it finally smashed against the bloody mouth. A howl of pain resounded as the mouth fell back into the swamp. However, right when they heaved a sigh of relief, the entire swamp started to roil while countless huge figures started to move about within the swamp. Their expressions changed, and Li Qingyi swiftly said, "Move!" Quickly, they raised their speed to its limits. But even then, demon beasts were still charging out incessantly from the swamp below and attacking them. While most of those demon beasts were at the king realm, their numbers caused a great amount of trouble for the three of them. Fan Li suddenly said, "It'll take an hour at least for us to escape this swamp. We'll definitely be unable to persist for that long based on the current situation." Li Qingyi spoke solemnly. "Young Miss Fan, do you have any ideas?" A ferocious expression flashed through her eyes as Fan Li said, "Those demon beasts below us love fresh blood. We'll definitely be able to draw their attention away if we throw someone down there. In that way, we'll be able to temporarily escape this danger we face." Fan Meng's expression changed. She naturally knew who her older sister was talking about, so she immediately said, "You can't do that, big sister. Yang Yi even saved our lives earlier. How can you throw him down there? Big sister Li, aren't I right?" Li Qingyi remained silent. Fan Li paid no attention to Fan Meng. She just gazed at Li Qingyi. "Young Miss Li, you should have realized that he isn't an ordinary person, and his original strength was definitely extremely formidable. However, he has fallen to such a state now. That proves that he definitely has a powerful enemy. If we save him, then it's very likely to bring calamity to our clans." When she spoke up to this point, she glanced at Yang Yi and continued, "Moreover, he's a ruthless and decisive person, and he's very vengeful. Our prior attitudes towards him weren't very good, so we can't guarantee that he won't act against us when he wakes up." "He won't," Fan Meng quickly said. "I guarantee that he won't. Big sister, don't throw him down there. I'm begging you." "Shut up," Fan Li suddenly shouted. "You guarantee that he won't? On what basis are you making such guarantees? How long have you known him? Let me ask you something. What will you do if he does attack us? Or if he attacks our fan clan? At that time, we'll become sinners of the clan." When she spoke up to this point, she gazed at Li Qingyi and said, "Young Miss Li, even if we're judging him like that without any proof, we can't be bothered about that. We can't be sure that he won't become a threat to us if he's allowed to live. Moreover, once he does act against us, then it'll definitely be a calamity to both the powers that we represent." Li Qingyi had hesitance on her face. Suddenly, Fan Meng said, "Let's just toss him down." Li Qingyi and Fan Li gazed at Fan Meng with astounded expressions on their faces. Fan Meng's face was slightly pale as she flew over to Li Qingyi, and then she took Yang Yi from Li Qingyi and said, "I was the reason why he stayed behind just now, so let me toss him down myself." Fan Li nodded, and her voice became much more gentle. "Little Meng, it's for the best that you are able to." Her voice suddenly stopped abruptly, and then her eyes opened wide as horror and panic filled them, because Fan Meng had actually shot down towards the swamp with Yang Yi in her arms. "Big sister, I'm sorry. I can't save him, so I can only die with him."